Hello, Anarchy fans, and welcome to the podcast Anarchy Interviews, where I, Prismatic, interview Anarchy players who are famous and/or respected in their respective communities. Today, I'll be interviewing the owner of server AVAS.CC, D2K11. Do you mind giving us just an overview of who you are?
Yeah, so I'm D2K. I run AVAS. I'm the founder of AVAS. I started it back in early 2020, June 2020, as a spinoff of TVE. I figured that by starting AVAS, I could fix some of the issues with TVE, do it a little bit better, and we've been going strong for 3 years now. Currently, my role at AVAS is to manage the technical side. I usually stay in the background a bit, but it didn't always used to be that way.
Mm. Alright, so you mentioned TV. Do you mind elaborating on what that was?
Yeah, so in June 2020, TVE finally decided to shut off the nether roof and start disabling hacks. Prior to then, between March and June, there was absolutely no restriction on TVE. It was just a vanilla spigot install with no plugins other than a performance monitor. Um, but as the disk got full and lag issues started, whenever the server started consistently dropping to 8, 10 TPS, Penguin, the owner at the time, put in some restrictions to help the server stop lagging. At that point, I felt that it was no longer vanilla, and I wanted to create TVE again, just without the restrictions, but I wanted to find a way to curb that lag while maintaining what TVE used to be.
Mm-hmm. So, since I'm an avid Avast player, do you mind kind of explaining why you capped the speed limit at 40 in the overworld end?
So there wasn't much decision as to what the number should be. We looked at the maximum speed achievable in vanilla Minecraft without anything like any glitches or exploits, and the maximum speed you can get is through a couple horse breeds with a speed potion, and that puts you up to 18. We figured that was already fast enough. Um, Originally, whenever we first implemented it, we set it to 96, and as the player base grew, sorry, as the player base grew and people started getting more and more creative with bypasses and using different clients, we opted to drop it down a bit more. We actually settled on 36, but due to the just the nature of Minecraft, that speed measurement can be very inconsistent. So we gave it a little bit of play. In the actual code, the speed is capped at 41. Um, so we gave it about 5 blocks per second room, and if people stick to 36, they don't get speed limited incorrectly.
Mm-hmm. So, so a couple months back, you brought back the Nether Roof, right?
Correct.
So, at the time, I was just coming back to the server, and there was no speed limit, and then you decided to add a speed limit to it. Is there kind of any explanation behind that, and performance wise?
So we disabled the speed limit for a little bit because the server was performing pretty well, and it was also a lower player count at the time. Um, Actually, disabling it initially was kind of an accident. We made a code change that didn't sync up with the other version that we had, where speed limit wasn't broken.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever we realized it was disabled, it was a couple months after that had broken, and we hadn't had any issues with it being disabled, so we kept it that way. Um, and then as the influx of players started coming in, we had a small burst whenever we started advertising a little bit further. Um, we decided to reinstate it.
Hmm. So now, sticking on the technical side, is there any kind of future plans for bringing back any type of dupes that were in the vanilla game?
Bringing back, no. The original philosophy of AVAS was to keep every glitch and bug that Mojang had introduced. We try to stay away from introducing artificial dupes. The reason why we have vote dupe is because it keeps a stable economy, but it's not too overpowered. Um, so I don't think we're going to be reintroducing any vanilla dupes. But if things come along in 1.20, we'll leave it unpatched, and if Mojang patches it, we'll put that patch right back in.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you mentioned artificial dupes. So a couple months back, during there was a little shulker dupe exploit that from what I know was a bug in the code that you had made. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, that was an accident. Um, by the time we had introduced it, people were exploiting it to an extent to where it would have been more disruptive to the player base to just roll it back as opposed to continuing to let them use it for a while.
Mm,
So we let that go on for a period of time, which we thought wouldn't damage the economy but would keep people happy. And if I recall correctly, it was 2 weeks to a month we kept that going. And I
mm,
don't feel like the economy on AVAS is oversaturated more than it was. Um, so really, it was a decision of, do we take it away and have no impact at all, or do we leave it, let the players be happy, and still have little to no impact?
mm. All right. So now, kind of just onto like a business standpoint for Avas, what, how far, like how long do you think until Avas gets its like big break and like a bunch of new players start rolling in?
I think it's a great question, and I think it's something that we've been trying to figure out for a while, as is every other Anarchy owner. Um, I feel like personally, I think Anarchy as a genre is dying. For the past 2 years, we've analyzed trends from 2B, 9B, Constantium, all those major servers, and just overall, we've seen a dip in players on all those servers, and the actual difference from say summer 2020 to summer 2022 is pretty comparable to AVAS. Like in summer 2020 and 2021, we had 40, 50 players, and 2B at the time was up 500, 600 players in queue. So those are pretty big numbers for 2B, pretty big numbers for us. But now these days we're sitting maybe 10 to 15 active, and 2B is sitting at 200, 300 in queue. So the difference that 2B is seeing is the same difference that we're seeing. And to add on to that, vanilla anarchy as a genre is also dying. Um, New servers with new versions, same thing. I think most of the player base for Anarchy now is slowly migrating towards some of the older version servers in hopes that they get updated. Like 2B's been making test servers from 1.16 to now, and none of them have ever come to fruition, but I think it's just enough to keep people on 2B with that hope. Um, that said, I think the answer to your question of when AVAS is going to see a new influx of players is when Anarchy as a genre starts to pick back up again. If you look at Fit's numbers too, even from back in 2020, the view count has dropped substantially. There's just an overall less interest in Anarchy, especially with how Mojang is, um, or sorry, Microsoft is starting to add more restrictions onto Minecraft itself that's making it harder and harder as a server owner to maintain Anarchy.
Mm-hmm. So now something that I really do want to ask is, what do you think is kind of needed to kind of spike anarchy as a whole, like as a genre?
I think the biggest thing is I think Minecraft needs a resurgence in general. I think the reason why Anarchy got so big is truthfully originally because PewDiePie started playing Minecraft. Whenever PewDiePie started playing Minecraft, it impacted the YouTube algorithm in a way to where Fit's videos were promoted, Sal's videos were promoted. Um, so I think that once we see a resurgence in Minecraft content and just any major top 10 YouTuber starts playing Minecraft again, we'll see um, we'll see more people come back to Anarchy. I don't think in the future there's going to be a major flux of players like there were in 2020. Just and that's almost solely because of how Microsoft's going with chat restrictions and mod restrictions, and we're seeing um, some rumors that Mojang is banning for things like just using hacked clients. Um, so I think what the perfect thing that needs to happen is some top 10 YouTuber needs to start making Minecraft content again. Um, Fit needs to put out more Anarchy content. That needs to gain more traction. And Microsoft needs to back off from what they're doing as to not kill Anarchy.
Hmm. So about your comment on people being banned for the use of hack clients. So I there's one really big example. The fifth column. A bunch of their members were permanently banned from the game for griefing servers and everything. Do you know any other examples of this or?
I can't name specifics. It might have been. I think you're talking about that same Google Doc that I saw. I think that was in AVAS a while back. That's what I'm referring to, and I want to be hesitant on confirming if that's true or not because there are a couple things wrong with it, things that don't make sense. They clipped out part of the email from Mojang. The writing isn't professional, and the support person that was named in the email, there's no record of them ever existing. I think it's plausible that it's real, but I don't want to start panicking and taking action based off that one thing. But if things keep going that way and we start to see more examples of that, I think Anarchy's headed in the wrong direction.
Hmm. So, since I'm an avid kind of just viewer of Anarchy YouTube, and you kind of mentioned that it looked fake, and personally I would think it is too. Uh, but honestly, if it was to be real, what do you think would come of just the entire Anarchy scene on YouTube?
If it was real, I think the Anarchy scene on YouTube would almost die completely. If this was like, for example, if Mojang were to come out and say, yes, this is something we're doing, we're banning people for griefing, we're banning people for using hack clients, I think that a lot of the Anarchy YouTubers would fall out of the scene almost purely because they're scared of getting banned. I mean, if you're a YouTuber and you're putting out content like that, and obviously Fitz' username is public, a lot of his alts are public. If he keeps putting out videos like that after Microsoft or Mojang had said something like that, then they would drop out completely for fear of getting banned. That would be what I assume would happen. Either
Hmm.
that or they're a lot more private about their accounts.
Yeah. So now, if that does like happen, where you're able to get permanently banned for hacking, uh, how do you think that would be able to be weaponized in a sense on different Anarchy servers?
I'm not sure about weaponization. What I could see are people forging screenshots or people just taking screenshots of people like flying, for example, just little basic things like that. It would depend on how far Microsoft wanted to take it. Um, I feel like it would be a bad decision for Microsoft to do ban waves. I don't think it's something that they will do just because of how similar hacked clients are to just normal mods. I mean, from a technical standpoint, it is really hard to differentiate someone using like Optifine versus Future or something like that. Um, in order to do ban waves, they would have to go purely based off of what mods are installed. I don't think they can review hundreds of thousands of accounts, hundreds of thousands of reports of who's hacking or griefing um, or any of that. So I guess in terms of weaponization, it would have to be um, players reporting other players with valid evidence.
Hmm.
Um, and I think even then, Microsoft would have a hard time determining who to ban. It just depends on the extreme they take it.
Hmm. So now I'm gonna start getting into to more like Avast centered questions like for the player base really. Like
Sure.
okay. So I know you're very active in the Discord. So how do you really feel about like all the recent drama that's really been going on Avast?
To be completely honest with you, like I said, whenever we started this interview, I've tried to fall out of the scene of a little bit. Um, I like to stay in the background. I'm aware of some of the drama, but I don't follow it um, as heavily as say Mayor would. I know
Hmm.
6ix9ine doesn't really follow it much either. He's in the same boat as I am. He wants to do the tech side and kind of stay um, on the back end. Some of the drama I've seen with certain players putting out doxes, the drama between some of the groups, I think to an extent it can be healthy because that's kind of just the nature of Anarchy in general. Anarchy servers are drama servers.
Hmm.
There is an excitement without it. There's no real reason to play without it. I mean, the metrics on Anarchy retention are awful. We ran retention metrics for about 6 months back in 2021, and we found that over 80% of the players left in the first 5 minutes.
Hmm.
And I can't imagine it would be much different for other Anarchy servers. And I think the primary reason for that is because it's too difficult to get started. And then if we go a little further, um, only 2% of players stay for more than 2 hours.
Hmm.
And those 2 hours is just enough time to find a kit, dupe it, and be set. A lot of people on Anarchy servers don't have big ambitions, they just want to get the gear. So they get the gear, they build a small little base in those 2 hours, and then they're stuck on what to do next. The people that stay are involved in the community, and they're involved in the drama that's happening within the groups, within the Discord, within the Anarchy server. So I think that a little bit of drama in AVAS helps with retention. We haven't ran retention metrics lately, solely because the player count has been so low. I think it's something that we'd like to start doing as the ads start picking up, but I can't imagine the metrics would be too different. But in summer 2020, whenever we had these big issues, like there was a Persian who was DDoSing us for days at a time, that was some of the most active and unified I've ever seen for the community. When we had High Tech around, when we had Wobo around, those were some of the most active times for the server because it was notoriety and it was drama. So yeah, I think drama is healthy for Anarchy servers.
So now, this is still kind of related to the player base. How long as a server do you think AVAS really just has left in terms of a time frame, really?
6ix9ine and I have made a pact to do everything we can to get this server lasting 10 years. We've made a pact, an agreement since day one that we wanted a 10-year-old map. We've agreed that even if the server hits 0 players for 6 months, a year, 2 years, we might pick up promotion at that point. We might take breaks. There's a bunch of things we'll do in that time frame, but no matter the circumstance, no matter what, AVAS will stay up for 10 years, with the only exception being Microsoft or Mojang shuts down Anarchy servers with some restriction or some TOS change. But just environmental things, we'll always update AVAS, even if there's 0 players, and we will keep it going until we are physically no longer able to.
Well, I'm sure that's really good to hear for all the kind of really active people on the VOS who really do care about the server. And honestly, that is just genuinely good to hear in terms of an Anarchy server, especially a small one that's of one that's of a VOS's size.
Absolutely. 6ix9ine and I are all in, and that's also why we're trying to delegate some of our duties to other people. That's why we brought on Mayor. That's why we brought on almost all of our media team. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for 6ix9ine and I, so that in the event to where it did start to die, we have enough people that are dedicated to AVAS and into AVAS to where we could keep it going even if 6ix9ine and I had to drop for some reason.
So, when I was talking to Mayor, he mentioned that there was kind of this is kind of just a private conversation that me and Mayor had. He mentioned that there was kind of just a backup fund for VOS. If you guys ever kind of start to run out of money to host a server, is that kind of like an actual thing that you guys have going?
Yeah, we do have a little bit put away if something were to happen, if 6ix9ine were to lose his job, or if I couldn't fund it, or if we couldn't get funding from the player base, we have about a 6-month buffer to get everything figured out.
So, over the years of you running a VOS, who would you really say is one of the most legendary or respected players that you've seen come and go?
Good question. I want to say High Tech. I think High Tech was one of the original notorious people on AVAS. He was a major community figure for a while. Also to an extent IRDK, but he he stayed kind of behind the scenes of High Tech. He did a lot as much as High Tech, but he was more background, and High Tech was more of like the personality, I guess. It's really a shame that he left the community. I think he dropped from Anarchy in general. I've been actually trying to get a hold of him for the past couple months. He's the only outgoing friend request I have in my Discord at the moment. But I have a feeling he's not going to be coming back anytime soon, unfortunately.
So, I know that whenever you do get on the server, you like to just teleport around to everybody, see what's going on. What is kind of the most impressive or odd thing that you've seen going on when you've been online?
I would have to say, ah man, I can't ever remember the name of this person. There's a big player on 2B that played on our server uh for a while, and he made some pretty crazy builds. I cannot for the life of me remember his name now. Um, but he made some pretty crazy stuff, and I teleported around to him one day, and he was building a huge arc manually, which was what was impressive to me. He wasn't using schematica. You can tell when someone's using schematica because their head bops around and all that. Um, and I did get a chance to DM him a little bit and talk to him, and he said that he really liked the idea of the server. He really liked the unrestrictiveness and how easy it was to build things, because he said even on 2B, if you were to build in vanilla, there's still lag back, there's still the TPS drops. But he said that none of those issues were present on AVAS, so made it a really good building server.
Hmm. So now, this is still kind of just related to the player base. Now, so since you're kind of big in the anarchy scene, well, from what I know, I'd assume you've heard of Dawn Fear, correct?
Absolutely.
Hmm. So now, how healthy do you think it would be for the Avas communities now, since there's now a Dawn Fear branch on Avas?
I think that that's a great thing for AVAS. I think that it has the potential to be pretty big for AVAS. It depends. Um, because DL could come on the server with his group and build crazy stuff, but I don't think any of it will matter if the word doesn't get out. If
Hmm.
DL really likes AVAS, the group really likes it, and they spread it around to 2B or wherever they have any other branches, I think that could draw some players, but it just depends on how willing they are to move people over to AVAS.
Hmm. So now,
Also, the name was Oftopia. I just found it.
oh, okay. So now that I've kind of just gotten your stance on that, so since I will admit I am personally the one that is running the Avast Dawnfear branch. So that would mean that I am currently like in contact with Deloaded at most times of the most times of the week. How how likely do you think it would be of me to get him on Voss and show him around?
I mean, that would be fantastic. That's up to him.
Yeah, that is completely in his control. But honestly, so since we're kind of just on the topic of groups, what would you say is kind of just a group that you kind of just miss seeing around on the server, or that you were really impressed by?
I really miss the original Iron Kingdom group with Nas and Aftu. I think at that point, Avas was one of the at one of the healthiest points it could be at. There's a couple of videos up from them. The original Iron Kingdom base where it got leaked. So as an admin, Nas asked me to come and help me or come and help him destroy the base. And there's a like a 15, 20-minute video of that up somewhere. Um, so yeah, I think I really miss that original group. I really miss Squidman. He was a fantastic builder, and I'm really sad that I'm not gonna be able to see many of his builds anymore. I don't know if anyone's heard from him or where he's at, but I would love to see him back on the server sometime.
Hmm. So now, kind of just on the topic, what is kind of the least successful group or most annoying group that you've seen come and go in the past like year or so?
Least successful. That's an interesting question. I think I'm gonna go with Wobo's group. Um, Wobo tried to start this little grief bypass community, and he did a couple things that were interesting, but a lot of them were shut down really quickly, especially because he was such a loudmouth.
Hmm.
Um, I think that every bypass he came across, yeah, it was interesting, but he always talked about it in chat, always sent videos in, which was like the worst thing because he would demonstrate how to do it, which is like a great help in in actually patching it. So I think that if he had stayed a little bit more quiet and didn't flex around so much, his group could have been more successful. But just seeing him post how excited he was about the bypass and all the details just for it to be patched like 12 hours later was kind of pathetic.
Hmm. So I'm gonna kind of stick to the topic of groups. Out of everything that you've seen on the server so far, what would you say was kind of the most secretive group about what builds they've been going on and screenshots of their base?
Iron Kingdom. I don't think I can't think of a time Iron Kingdom ever got leaked except that first time. But that was early on after they learned their mistake there. I don't think Iron Kingdom's been leaked since, unless I'm out of the loop. But I still visit there every so often with some of the very few remaining people that are stationed at Iron Kingdom. It's still fully intact. I haven't heard any drama about them being leaked or anyone coming over. So I think that that's one of the more long-standing groups on AVAS. The one of the, if not the number one longest standing base on AVAS.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that they've probably been the best kept secret.
Mm-hmm. So now you mentioned you don't think Iron Kingdom has really been leaked after the original one, which I'd assume from what you said is leaked by via screenshots that they shared, right?
Right.
So I know that you were kind of a little out of the loop and you weren't really ever active during the summer of last year, were you?
No, not much.
So there was kind of just a big drama on the server where the whole of Iron Kingdom was just griefed due to Condi, the ex-admin,
That's right.
leaking the coordinates to a now ex-player Squid, and then it apparently, according to one of the griefers, took them a total of 7 hours to grief.
I'm not surprised. It was a massive base.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's really yeah. I know. I remember what you're talking about. Looking back, um, I think it's really unfortunate that Condi used her ability in that way to cause destruction to Iron Kingdom. Um, I think in hindsight, Condi was one of the worst people we've brought on to the administration team, and since then we've been very, very, very careful about who we've brought on in any capacity. Um, Condi was a mistake and definitely one that we've learned from. I think that she was too emotionally involved with the player base. I think that she was too emotionally involved with the with the person she was talking to at the time, which I won't name, um, and just too emotionally involved in AVAS in general. I think she let her feelings get in the way of being a good admin, and I think ultimately that's what led to Iron Kingdom getting destroyed.
Mm-hmm. So now I'm still gonna be sticking to the topic of groups for the next few minutes. So from what you've seen in terms of like screenshots and kind of just overall community talk, like what would you say is just the most successful group that's popped up within the last few years?
Well, it's a great question. I don't, like I said, I don't follow groups too closely. Um, Particularly after 2022, I almost fell out of that completely because I hadn't seen much. Prism was definitely w- the first group I've seen in a while to actually maintain membership and maintain a base for longer than 2 weeks. Um, so most successful recently, I'd say Prism.
Mm-hmm.
Back in 2021 and early 2022, I'd say Iron Kingdom.
Mm-hmm. So since you did bring up Prism Inc., right? We actually do still have one standing base after after our quite sad grief by an ex member Squid that took place yesterday. We now only have one standing base that's actually lasted nearly a year now. That would be Prism Base
Fantastic. Glad to
4.
hear it.
So no, that would also be kind of the base that kind of just sparked Prism Inc. to just blow up. and I feel kind of just the presence of a big group on AVAS kind of just brings in a little more, like just a little more players to the group, and also just to AVAS in general.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think having groups, especially one dominating group, is good for the player base. I think where groups can fail is being too restrictive about memberships. Um, if I go back all the way to TVE before AVAS even started, I ran a group called F-Clan, and that group we had issues with membership because we couldn't find anyone who was reliable enough to put at our base. So what we did was start a little proxy base that we told the new joins that like this is our main base, this is where we do everything, and we'd let them sit there for a month, 2 months to see if they would destroy the base, and if they didn't, we would bring them to the main base.
Hmm.
I think that if there were groups on AVAS that started doing that, um, and started bringing in new players to groups, I think would help with retention a lot.
Hmm.
I don't think we necessarily have an issue with player flow. I mean, we still get 10, 20 new players a day. The issue is that they don't stay on very long. So, if I'm sure you can imagine if 10, 20 players a day all found groups, something to be a part of, then AVAS's numbers would be a lot higher.
Hmm.
Um, it's just a matter of having something to do. Like I said earlier, 2% of players stay after 2 hours. But if they're in a group with a larger goal and a larger, um, just something larger to get at, then I think that's good for the server. And that's why early on, um, in early 2022, we really pushed public works projects like the Nether Highway, the Obsidian Roof, things all like that, and we saw some of our better retention numbers at that time.
Hmm. So now, since you mentioned like retention, is there any kind of message that you'd like to give to the AVAS community about kind of keeping the community a little less toxic and more inviting for new players just so we keep seeing some more players roll in and staying for long periods of time?
I think just talking to people who join, a lot of people, a lot of new joins feel um, not necessarily scared, but like I guess lost in a sense. Um, so I think that reaching out to some of the new players, talking to them, figuring out what they want to do, possibly recruiting them, just some sort of interaction, um, I think would help a lot with retention. Something else that might be good is not giving out kits so often. I know that one of the leading causes of people leaving is because the server is just too difficult, but in my opinion, if they feel like the server is too difficult and they can't get out of spawn or whatnot, um, they're not going to enjoy Anarchy in general because Anarchy it's a difficult genre. Um, so I think that letting people fend for themselves will kind of filter out the people who aren't built for Anarchy. If someone can get out of spawn, even using hacks, if someone can get out of spawn, get all their stuff set up, and be self-sufficient at least for a while, I think that'll show that they are strong enough to survive on an Anarchy server and have the intention of continuing on. So, talking to people um, and not making it so easy that they feel like they've accomplished everything in the first 2 hours would help with retention.
So now, kind of just on, so we've kind of spiraled back into the topic of just business, of a business standpoint for Voss. Where do you kind of see the most players rolling in from, like a social media platform or a voting website?
I think most of our player base comes from search engine listings. So for the very early parts of AVAS, whenever we first started putting out articles for search engine optimization, um, we used uh, Sleepy's technique. Sleepy and I were actually really good friends on TVE. Um, our groups were allies. We talked quite a bit. Um, and our first interaction, actually, he was telling me about how he was a developer, and a lot of the things he said, he spoke on accident. So I called him out for not being a developer, and he finally did prove it. And then after that, we started talking. We kind of laughed it off, and we grew as friends together as developers who were interested in starting our own server and building a better TVE. He started another Anarchy at about the same time I started AVAS, and we never lost contact. We always tried to help each other. But as AVAS started to hit lower numbers, I kind of sent him a DM of desperation to try and figure out what we can do to boost it, because we thought we were doing everything we could. And he gave us the tip that we should use a fandom wiki to create a top 5 list, because those are, Google really likes fandom wikis because they're reputable domains, they're typically good content. So we copied his technique and worked with him a little bit to get on his lists that were already at the top of Google. And whenever Nether Anarchy died, that list stopped getting so much traffic, and that list died down. So we reused their strategy and started hitting #1 on Google, and that was that was summer 2021. So that was a large part of the reason why we had so much player influx at the time, was because we were top of Google and we were still in Sleepy's lists. Unfortunately, Google has kind of caught on to low quality content on fandom, and that technique doesn't work so much anymore. So we've adopted a different strategy that, for competitive reasons, I won't go into detail. We've adopted a new strategy to boost our server to top rankings on Google, and we're still working on that and partnering with other servers to leverage their promotion in exchange for using our promotion, which is actually going really strong at the moment.
Mm-hmm. So, since you brought up wikis, so I know that the Avast wiki isn't very active and it doesn't really ever get updated now. And I have caught word uh of you and 6ix9ine trying to get a custom domain down and just coding your own wiki. Do you have any comments on that and how it's going technically?
We, I can't remember who we talked to someone I can't name for privacy reasons. They're pretty involved in AVAS, but generally they've remained anonymous. Not even Mayor doesn't even know who this person is. But we've talked to them about hopefully spinning up a wiki with our own software. Me personally, I've been getting more into web development, and I've been building some projects out both for work and personally to get more into web development. I think that we can put together a solution for the wiki, but I also don't think it's the ultimate priority right now for the team. I think that it is a limited subset of people who are interested in a wiki, and building something from the ground up would take pretty substantial time and resources that we're not willing to invest at the moment for that small subset of people. Additionally, historically, it has been really hard to find people who are willing to maintain the wiki. Everyone we found that says they want to maintain it, they typically they just dial in their information, maybe some about their group, and then they back off of it and get really lazy about adding anything else. So I think that in order to move forward on the wiki, we'd have to garner more interest for it, and we would have to find someone who is willing to maintain it, or find a system to where people can make their own changes and just need approval to get published.
So now we're kind of just reaching the end of the interview in terms of time and length. Is there kind of just any closing statements or players you would love to see on the podcast?
Specific players, good luck, but if you could get 6ix9ine on here, I think you would have some really interesting comments about philosophy. Since the beginning of the server, he has kind of kept me in line in terms of ethics and philosophy, because whenever we started AVAS has kind of morphed a lot. If we do anything that's questionable, like, is this really vanilla? Is this unethical for the player base? Is this admin abuse? Is this XYZ? We always go to 6ix9ine. He's the one that makes the decisions for those kinds of things. He's really intelligent. He's really, really keen on philosophy and ethics. So I think that if you were to talk to him, he would give you some really helpful insight. As for a closing statement, I think that AVAS is headed in the right direction with promotion and partnerships. We've talked to 3 or 4 servers at this point that are kind to us, are happy to work with us. And we have some. The end goal for AVAS, for the people who don't know, is to get advertising to a point to where AVAS has enough players coming in to be sustainable technically. And really, the true end goal is to get it sustainable in a financial standpoint, because right now we still lose hundreds of dollars a month on AVAS. We still want to keep it running. We can still afford it. But in order for it to run entirely by itself with no intervention, it would have to be technically sustainable. So that means TPS rarely ever drops, very few lag exploits, the economy's good, speed limits good in place, anti-legals works. All of these critical components that keep AVAS as it is need to be perfected and need to be able to run smoothly. And then, yeah, the financial standpoint, we need to have between $200 and $250 a month in donations every month consistently. And then just interest. That will be the hardest thing, is keeping AVAS sustainable in terms of interest, because like I said at the very beginning of this interview, depends on Microsoft, depends on YouTubers, depends on a whole bunch of things. Technically, we're almost to a sustainable point. Financially, we're pretty far from it. And interest, I think we're pretty far from it. So, yeah, interview 6ix9ine. He'll tell you the same things. And yeah, I just want the player base of AVAS, who I presume is listening, to know that we're going to keep it going. We got goals, and not everything is stagnant. There's just a lot of things that are out of our control. We're doing our best. That's all I got.
All right, so now that we're kind of finishing this off, I guess I gotta plug everything. Yeah. The AVAS.CC IP will be in the description as always. My Discord will be there, so will my socials. And yeah, just have a nice day.